Hello students. Today we are going to learn lesson number 2, the establishment of company power. We all know that India has been a popular destination for trade since ancient times. India had a flourishing trade with Europe, Africa, Middle East and Southeast Asia. There was a great demand in Europe for Indian spices like textiles, muslin, indigo, precious stones, etc. This trade was particularly brisk during the first 3 centuries of Christian era. But the old trade routes through Egypt and Syria up to the Persian Gulf were closed in 7th century when the Arabs conquered those countries. As European nations had no ports on the shores of Mediterranean Sea, were shut out from participation in the lucrative trade with the East. So, there arose the necessity of finding a non-Mediterranean sea route to India. Now here, we got to know that has started to developing in our country. They wanted to trade with us, but in the beginning, the company did not come here. The Portuguese had came here. So let's find out what they had in their time. The Portuguese were the pioneers in finding a new alternative sea route to India. In 1498, Vasco da Gama, under the patronage of King Emmanuel, set out for India. He reached to Calicut in India and established the trade settlements in Goa, Daman and Diu. Next, Dutch East India Company. In 1602, the Dutch founded the Dutch East India Company. As their main interest was trade, they concentrated their attention on the Spice Island in the Far East. They established their trading centers at Surat, Nagapatnam, Cochin and various other parts of India. In 1658, they won Ceylon from the Portuguese. After the intermittent wars and agreements with British, they gave up all claims to India to concentrate wholly on Indonesian islands. Later on, English East India Company had come to India. On 31st December 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted the East India Company the monopoly to trade with Eastern world for 15 years through a charter. This was the biggest decision in human history. When British defeated Portuguese in 1612 at Surat, Jahangir granted a farman to British allowing them to establish a permanent factory at Surat in 1613. In 1615, English ambassador Sir Thomas Roe got the permission from the Mughal emperor to open more factories at Agra, Ahmedabad and Bharuch. The English company bought the site of Madras in 1639 and also obtained permission to set up a fortified factory called Fort St. George in 1651. The company established factories at Hooghly. In 1661, the English company of Bombay from Charles II at a nominal rent, who got it from Portuguese as part of the dowry of his wife. Further, in 1698, the company developed 3 villages into a city in Bengal and built the Fort William around the factory. That city came to be known as Calcutta. By this time, the company became successful in eliminating the influence of its rival powers in India and started to interfere in the political affairs. Now the next topic is French East India Company. You know what, student? The French were late in making their appearance on the Indian coast. In 1664, the French East India Company was founded and the French established themselves at Chandernagar, Bengal, Mahe, Kerala, and Karaikal and Pondicherry on the eastern coast, and Mauritius in the Indian Ocean. The French East India Company was established by Colbert, who was a minister of Louis XVI. It was Louis XIV. It was largely a government controlled company which depended on the French government for finances. Pondicherry became its headquarters, and in 1742 French appointed Dupleix as the governor of its possessions in India. His ambition of establishing the French Empire in India led to the wars between the English and the French. Next topic is mercantilism is the economic theory according to which the prosperity of a nation depends upon its supply of capital and that the global volume of trade is unchangeable. The amount of capital represented by gold held by the state is best increased through a positive balance of trade with other nations with large exports and low imports. It suggests that the ruling country should advance these goals by playing a protectionist role in the economy, by encouraging exports and discouraging imports through the use of tariffs. So students, so far we have learned about the various persons who came in our country and ruled and tried to trade with India. First, the Portuguese came, then the Dutch East India Company was founded, and then the English East India Company came, and then we have French East India Company in our country to trade with us. But they all were greedy and they wanted to have all the resources of India and wanted to set their monopoly in our country. So here we are moving forward in the chapter and we'll find the next topic, that is the founding of British rule in India. The Portuguese, the Dutch, the English, and the French came to India as traders to make huge profits out of trade with India. Naturally, it led to a sense of competition, and as a result, they became rivals. Yes, it is obvious that if two persons want the same thing, the two persons will become rivals of each other to have that thing or to have the possession over thing. Same was with England as well as with French. They want to have the possession over Indian goods and commodities. Were successful in driving out Portuguese and Dutch from most of the parts of India, but French were still in India after the end of the 18th century. Both French and English were eager to establish their supremacy in India. Their differences were finally resolved through the three Carnatic Wars or Anglo-French Wars fought between 1744 to 1763. They are called Carnatic Wars because most of the battles were fought in the Carnatic and other parts of present-day Tamil Nadu. The French and the British were traditional rivals in Europe, and their interests also clashed in America. Wars between them in Europe spread to India, where both the companies wanted monopoly of trade. Now, what is monopoly? Means only one rule. No other person can have the same thing for selling in that particular area. That is called monopoly. Then next we have the three Carnatic Wars, and in that somehow the English people have got the victory, and then the rise of British power took place. Taking advantage of the confusion that prevailed after the death of Aurangzeb, one of his governors, Alwardi Khan of Bengal, asserted his independence. He was diplomatic enough to maintain good terms with the English, but at the same time did not allow them to fortify their settlement. He was succeeded by his grandson Siraj-ud-Dawla, who was suspicious of the designs of English, so he came into conflict with them. You know what? The Mughal emperors were there who invited Britishers in our country, and then they started betraying them by putting them into false agreement and treaties. I hope till here you are getting the whole map of the company's journey in our country. First the Dutches came, first the Portuguese came, then the Dutches, then the East India Company and the French. East India Company, however, found or made the monopoly in the Indian economy and made the Mughals as well as some Rajput kings out of the league. So here next going to have some battles in India where the English people were fought, or English fought with the Indian rulers and emperors. Let's find them out. We have two topics here. First is Battle of Plassey, where this battle was fought between the Nawab of Bengal, that is Siraj-ud-Daulah, and the English East Indian Company in 1757. Siraj-ud-Daulah, suspicious of their designs, ordered the English to dismantle their recent fortification. As the English did not dismantle the fortification, Siraj-ud-Daulah seized the English factory at Qasim Bazaar. It is said that 145 English prisoners were confined in a small room for the night, and in the morning it was found that only 23 had survived. This incident was known as Black Hole Tragedy. You can see in the picture below, Battle of Plassey fought between Siraj-ud-Daulah and English East Indian Company in 1757. Then we have the next one, the Battle of Buxar. The battle was fought in 1764 between Mir Qasim, the Nawab of Bengal, the Mughal Emperor and Nawab of Awadh on one side, and the English on the other. The allies were defeated by the company's forces at Buxar. It was one of the decisive battles of Indian history, as it made company real masters of Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. Yes students, now these were the fights or the battles between the English and the rulers of India, and somehow the English manipulated all the lands these rulers used to possess. Then this had resulted in the expansion of British Empire, where after conquering the richest province of Bengal and having eliminated all their foreign rivals, the company was now ready to acquire more territories in India. By 1818, entire subcontinent except Punjab and Sindh had been brought under its control. Part of it was ruled directly by the company and the rest by princely states over whom the company had supreme control. Next, we would be learning Anglo-Mysore Wars. What was that? 4 Anglo-Mysore Wars were fought between 1766 to 1799. Led by Warren Hastings, the company fought 2 wars with the Nawab of Mysore, Hyder Ali. Though Hyder Ali had some victories, British were able to finally subdue him with the help of Nizam of Hyderabad and the neutrality of Marathas. Hyder's son Tipu, perceiving the British intentions, waged 2 wars against Governor-Generals Cornwallis and Wellesley. He was killed fighting heroically in 1799, and his territories were divided between the British and their ally, the Nizam. The new ruler was forced to sign the subsidiary treaty. Now, what is subsidiary treaty? The next topic is that only. Subsidiary treaty was given a shape by Lord Wellesley, and in that it is a policy that subordinated Indian states to the paramount authority of East India Company. The ruler who signed the subsidiary treaty accepted the permanent stationing means to stay them forever, of British forces in his kingdom at his cost. To meet its cost, an Indian state would either surrender a portion of its territory to the company or would pay an annual amount. In return, the company would protect all the subsidiary states against foreign invasion. So here it was a quite manipulating treaty was founded by Lord Wellesley to take away the territories of the Indian rulers. The British thus maintained a large army stationed all over India at the expense of the rulers. The ruler had to disband his army and he lost control over his defense, foreign and domestic policies. It led to disruption of economy as lakhs of soldiers and court officials became unemployed with assured protection from the British. The rulers neglected the welfare of the people and their rule became more oppressive. Now with this policy, the company had become a major power in the country. Next topic is expansion from 1818 to 1857. As stated earlier, by 1818 the entire subcontinent except Sindh and Punjab had been brought under British control. Sindh was a loyal subsidiary state and yet it was annexed in 1843 by an act of betrayal. Betrayal means cheating. The state of Punjab flourished under Ranjit Singh, who had built a large kingdom. He had kept the British at bay through diplomacy and with the help of a strong army built on European line. But after his death, his kingdom plunged into stability caused by a civil war between his wife Rani Jindan and the army. Using this to their advantage, the British defeated the Punjab army in two wars and annexed Punjab also. Thus, the last independent state was absorbed into the British Empire. Now, here the whole nation had been absorbed by the British power, and now Lord Dalhousie and the doctrine of lapse had came into being, and it was that if the if an Indian ruler died without a male heir, his kingdom would lapse or pass into British hands. Means if the ruler has a girl or has no son, then his whole kingdom or territory will be given to British hands. Several states like Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur and Jhansi were annexed under this policy. He also refused to allow pension to ex-Peshwa Baji Rao's second adopted son Nana Sahib, who Lord Dalhousie. Finally, in 1856, the King also took over Awadh. The British accused the ruler Wajid Ali Shah of maladministration and misgovernance, means wrong way of administrating and governing. Britishers provoke general people that the ruler is not giving you good administration. That's why the people started disbelieving him and started believing in British company and its people. Later on, the Acts of Permanent Settlement was started. British policies were designed to increase the company's profit and to exploit Indian resources to their own advantage. However, it was felt that British government should control the basic policies of the company's Indian administration, which had become highly corrupt. So, through a number of acts, the control of the British government over the company was established. Now, the British company was governed by the British government directly. However, the Act subjected the actions of the directors of East India Company to the supervision of British government. The act had certain limitations as no definite control over the company had been given to British government, and also the Governor General could be overruled by his council. So to improve this, Pitt's India Act was passed in 1784. It gave British government supreme control over the company by establishing a new body, the Board of Control. It had 6 commissioners, including 2 cabinet ministers in the British government. Now, this meant that Indian trade was open to any British subject. By the Act of 1833, a law member was added to the Governor General's Council. The company now became a purely administrative body. So then, when the administratives and government had come to the country, the administrative organization was found, and there were many civil services and army and police and judicial organizations were founded. So we are going to end our chapter. So what we have learned so far in the chapter, that the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a colonial power. The arrival of new steam technology also helped in this process, and the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. So I hope this chapter is clear to you. The points which I have read and taught to you are understandable, and still if you have any doubt, you can read the chapter by yourself and will be or can ask me in the live classes later. Thank you, students.